The great hall of the Galactic Council sparkled with lights from 1,000 worlds. 12 massive chairs sat in a circle, each one holding a being from the most powerful races in the galaxy. Today, like every month, they met to discuss important matters. But right now they were laughing. "Did you see the humans try to build a faster ship?" said Counselor Vextari, his blue skin shimmering with amusement. "They strapped more engines to the back. More engines! Like children playing with toys." The other council members laughed harder. Some had tentacles that wiggled with joy. Others had crystal bodies that chimed like bells when they giggled. "Their diplomats are even funnier," added Counselor Mordek, whose 6 eyes blinked in different patterns. "They think saying please and thank you will make us respect them. So primitive." High above the galaxy, on the space station called Nexus Prime, these powerful beings often made fun of younger races. They had done this for thousands of years. It made them feel better about themselves. "I have an idea," said Vextari, leaning forward in his chair. "The trials of ascension begin next month. What if we invite the humans?" The laughter stopped. For a moment the hall was quiet. "The trials?" asked Mordek. "But those are sacred. They decide who joins our council, who becomes a real galactic citizen." "Exactly," said Vextari with a wide grin. "Think about it. These humans with their tiny brains and weak bodies trying to pass tests that have challenged the best minds for centuries. The galaxy will laugh for years." Counselor Zithara, who looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, pulsed with excitement. "The betting pools alone would be incredible. How long before they quit? How badly will they fail the first test? I bet they don't even understand the invitation," said another member. "They probably think it's a mistake." The vote was quick. All 12 members agreed. They would send an invitation to Earth, to the small blue planet where humans lived. It would be the funniest thing the galaxy had seen in centuries. Far away on Earth, Captain Lee Dong-Woo was reading reports in his small office. He used to be a soldier, fighting in wars between Earth's nations. Now he worked for the United Earth government, trying to make peace with alien races they had recently discovered. His computer made a soft sound. A new message had arrived. But this was not from another human. The symbols on the screen were alien, but his computer translated them into Korean, then into English. "Greetings, people of Earth," the message began. "The Galactic Council invites your species to participate in the trials of ascension. These trials test the worthiness of races seeking to join galactic civilization. Please send your best representatives to Nexus Prime within 30 days. Dongwu read the message 3 times. Then he called his friend, Dr. Park Ji-won. "Ji-won, you need to see this," he said into his phone. 20 minutes later, Ji-won was in his office. She was a scientist who studied alien life. Her hair was tied back and her glasses reflected the computer screen as she read. "This has to be fake," she said. "We've been trying to contact the Galactic Council for 10 years. They never answer. Now they want us to join some trial?" "I thought the same thing," said Dongwu. "But look at this." He pointed to the bottom of the message. "The encryption codes are real. This came from Nexus Prime." Ji-won sat down hard in her chair. "Dongwu, do you know what the trials of ascension are? I've read about them in alien databases. Only 12 races have ever passed. 12 out of thousands who tried. What happens to the ones who fail? They go home in shame. Their planets are marked as not ready for galactic society. Some races never get a second chance." Dongwu was quiet for a long moment. Outside his window, He could see the city of Seoul. Millions of people lived their lives, not knowing that their future might depend on what happened next. "We have to tell the government," he said finally. The next day, the emergency meeting of Earth's leaders was chaos. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals from every nation argued loudly. Some wanted to ignore the invitation. Others wanted to send their best soldiers. A few thought it was a trap. "We're not ready," shouted the president of the American Federation. "Our best ships can barely reach Mars quickly. These aliens travel between stars like we drive to work. If we refuse, we might never get another chance," argued the Chancellor of the European Union. "This could be the moment that decides Earth's future." Ambassador Choi Hae-jin stood up from her seat. She was known for being calm and smart, even when others were panicking. "We need to think about this differently," she said. "Why would they invite us now? We've been trying to contact them for years with no luck. Something has changed." "Maybe they finally respect us," suggested the Prime Minister of Japan. "Or maybe they don't," said Hae-jin quietly. "Maybe they think we'll be easy to beat. Maybe this is entertainment for them." The room went quiet. Nobody wanted to think about that possibility. "Either way," said Dong-woo, who had been listening from the back of the room, "we have to go. If we don't try, we'll always wonder what might have been." "And who exactly is we?" asked the president of Brazil. "Who do we send to represent all of humanity?" Dong-woo looked around the room at all the powerful people. Then he looked at Ji-won, who was taking notes in the corner. He thought about engineer Kim Tae-ho, who had built Earth's fastest ship with spare parts and crazy ideas. He thought about all the humans who solve problems by thinking differently. "Send people who don't think like them," he said. "Don't send our strongest or our smartest by their standards. Send people who think like humans." 3 weeks later, a small team gathered at the spaceport. Dong-woo would lead them. Ji-won would study the aliens they met. Hae-jin would handle diplomacy. Tae-ho would keep their ship running with whatever they could find. Their ship was called the Persistence. It was not beautiful like alien ships. It was built from human steel and powered by human engines. But it was strong, and it was theirs. As they prepared to leave Earth, none of them knew that across the galaxy, betting pools were already forming. The odds against humanity were so high that most aliens thought it was free money. But Dong-woo remembered something his grandfather had told him during the last war on Earth. When everyone expects you to lose, you have nothing to lose by trying to win. The Persistence lifted off from Earth on a Tuesday morning. Behind them, 6 billion humans watched and hoped. Ahead of them waited the greatest challenge any human had ever faced. None of them knew they were flying into a joke, but they were about to turn that joke on its head. The Persistence shook as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the front window, Nexus Prime looked like a metal moon covered in lights. The space station was bigger than any city on Earth. Ships from dozens of alien races moved around it like insects around a lamp. "Well," said Kim Tae-ho from the pilot's seat, "we're definitely not the biggest fish in this pond." Dr. Park Ji-won pressed her face to the side window. "Look at those ships. Some of them are the size of mountains, and they're so smooth, like they were grown instead of built." Captain Lee Dong-woo sat in the commander's chair, trying to look confident. Inside, his stomach was doing flips. "Remember, we're not here to impress them with our technology. We're here to pass their tests." A voice came through their radio. It spoke in a language that sounded like music mixed with mathematics. Their computer translated it. Earth vessel Persistence, you are cleared to dock at Bay 7439. Follow the yellow lights. Do not deviate from the path. Ambassador Choi Hye-jin frowned. Bay 7439? That seems like it's very far from the important areas. They're putting us in the cheap seats, said Tae-ho, steering their ship past gleaming alien vessels. Look, that ship has living trees growing on it. And that one looks like it's made of crystal. Their docking bay was small and dim. When they stepped off their ship, a young woman in a maintenance uniform was waiting for them. She was human, but something was different about her eyes. They seemed to see everything at once. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," she said in Korean. "I'm Yoon Subin. I work in the technical department here." "You're human," said Ji-won with surprise. "How long have you been here?" 2 years, said Subin. "I came here to study alien technology, but I have to warn you, the other species here, they don't think much of humans. They call us the joke race." Dongwoo felt his jaw tighten. "What do you mean?" "They invited you here for entertainment. Everyone knows it. There are betting pools about how quickly you'll fail. Most aliens bet you won't pass even the first test." The human team looked at each other. They had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed still hurt. "What are the tests like?" asked Hye-jin. "Different every time," said Subin. "But they always test technology, physical ability, mental puzzles, and leadership. The aliens are really good at all of these things. Humans, well, we do things differently." She led them through corridors filled with strange beings. Some walked on legs, others floated through the air. A few looked like living rocks. All of them stared at the humans with what looked like amusement. "The opening ceremony is in 1 hour," said Subin. "That's where they'll explain the rules. Try not to let them get under your skin." The ceremony hall was enormous. Thousands of aliens sat in seats that changed shape to fit their bodies. The human team was given seats in the very back, where it was hard to see the stage. Counselor Vextari appeared on the stage in a flash of blue light. His voice boomed through the hall. "Welcome, beings from across the galaxy, to the 847th Trials of Ascension." The crowd cheered. "This year we have representatives from the usual strong races. The crystal Shimari with their perfect logic, the plant-like Veltari with their collective consciousness, the energy beings called Luxendi, who can travel at the speed of light." More cheers. The camera showing Vextari on the big screens never pointed toward the humans. "And," said Vextari, his voice becoming amused, "for the first time in 3 centuries we have a truly primitive species joining us. Please welcome the humans from Earth." A spotlight suddenly shone on the human team. Around them, thousands of aliens began laughing. Some pointed with tentacles or claws. Others made sounds that were clearly mockery in their languages. Dong-woo stood up slowly. He looked around at all the laughing faces. Then he smiled and waved. "Thank you for inviting us," he said loudly. "We're excited to be here." This made the aliens laugh even harder, but Dong-woo kept smiling. Ji-won and the others stood up too, waving like they were honored guests instead of jokes. "The first trial begins tomorrow," announced Vextari. "It will test your technological understanding. Each team must repair a broken starship engine, using only the tools provided. Good luck to all competitors." As the aliens filed out of the hall, still laughing about the humans, Subin led the team to their quarters. "That was brave," she said to Dong-woo, "standing up and waving like that." "If they want to laugh at us, let them," said Dong-woo, "but we won't give them the satisfaction of seeing us break." Their quarters were small and plain. The beds were too short for humans, and the food dispenser only provided alien meals that tasted like metal and flowers. "I've been studying the other competitors," said Jiwon, pulling out her tablet. "The Shimari are like living computers. They can calculate anything instantly. The Veltari share thoughts, so they never make mistakes from poor communication. The Luxendi can examine problems at the speed of light." "What about us?" asked Taiho. "What makes humans special?" "I don't know yet," admitted Jiwon. "Maybe nothing." That night, Dongwu couldn't sleep. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, with 6 billion people counting on them. The next morning, they were led to the testing facility. The broken starship engine was the size of a building. It hummed with alien technology that none of them understood. Tools that looked like they belonged in a medical kit were laid out on tables. "You have 4 hours," announced the test supervisor, an alien that looked like a walking tree. "Begin when ready." The other teams moved with confidence. The Shimaris. Crystal bodies began glowing as they analyzed the problem. The Veltari spread out like a living carpet, touching every part of the engine at once. The Luxendi became streaks of light, examining the engine at incredible speed. The humans stood there looking confused. "I don't even know what half of these tools are for," whispered Taiho. "The engine uses principles of physics I've never seen," said Jiwon. For the first hour, they did nothing but watch and learn. Other competitors were already making progress. The alien audience pointed and laughed at the humans who seemed to be doing nothing. But Dongwu was thinking, and watching, and remembering something from his military days. "Taiho," he said quietly, "in the war, when our equipment broke, what did you do?" "I fixed it with whatever I could find," said Taiho. "I used car parts to fix helicopters. I used kitchen timers to fix radar systems." "The aliens aren't using all the tools," observed Hyejin. "They each use the tools they understand. But what if the solution needs tools that no one species would think to use together?" Jiwon's eyes lit up. "That's it. They're all specialists. But humans are generalists. We adapt. We improvise." Taiho grabbed tools that other teams had ignored. Simple things. A hammer-like device, something that looked like wire, a tool that seemed to measure heat. "This engine is broken because it's overheating," he said, pointing to a glowing section. "These fancy aliens are trying to fix the complex parts. But sometimes the simple solution is the right one." He began connecting the wire in patterns that looked random. The other competitors stopped to stare. What was this primitive creature doing? "The cooling system is blocked," said Taiho, working. "Faster now." "But not with debris. With too much complexity. They over-engineered it." The wire he was installing looked ugly compared to the beautiful alien repairs around it. But when he connected the last piece, the engine's temperature dropped immediately. The testing supervisor's tree-like face showed confusion. "The human solution is functional," it announced. "Crude, but functional." They didn't win the test. The Shimari finished first with a repair that was mathematically perfect, but the humans had finished third out of 20 teams. They had not failed completely. In the audience, some aliens stopped laughing. A few started talking among themselves. "That should not have worked," said one alien with too many arms. "But it did work," replied another whose skin was covered in scales. "How did they see what we missed?" Back in their quarters, the human team was tired but excited. "We're not the worst," said Hyejin with a smile. "More importantly," said Dongwu, "we did something they didn't expect. We confused them. Subin appeared at their door with food from Earth that she had somehow obtained. The other workers are talking about you, she said. Some of the junior alien staff think your solution was actually better than the winners. Simpler, more reliable. What's the next test? Asked Ji-Wan. Physical trials, said Subin. Strength, speed, endurance. You'll be competing against beings who can lift mountains and run faster than your ships. The team looked at each other. None of them were athletes. None of them had superhuman strength. Well, said Taeho, at least they still expect us to fail. Good, said Dongwu. Let's keep surprising them. Outside their window, Nexus Prime continued its eternal dance around distant stars. In the betting halls, the odds against humanity got slightly better. Not much, but enough that a few smart aliens started placing small bets on the crazy humans who fixed starship engines with wire and determination. The physical trial arena was a nightmare of obstacles. Walls that reached toward the ceiling, pits filled with strange liquid, and barriers that moved on their own. The human team stood at the starting line, looking very small next to their competitors. Next, to them a Korthak warrior stood 3 meters tall, with muscles like steel cables. Its 4 arms could probably lift their entire ship. On the other side, a Veltari had spread itself into a thin sheet that could slip through any crack. The trial is simple, announced the supervisor. Reach the finish line. You may use any method you choose, but you may not harm other competitors. The starting signal was a flash of green light. Immediately, the arena became chaos. The Korthak smashed through walls like they were paper. The Veltari flowed under obstacles like water. The Luxendi became light and traveled through transparent barriers. Other aliens flew, teleported, or simply ignored gravity. The humans ran toward the first wall. We can't go through it like they can, panted Kim Taeho. Then we go around, said Captain Lee Dongwu. While other competitors took the obvious path through the center of the arena, the humans ran along the edge. They found a place where the wall didn't quite reach the side barrier. It was a tiny gap, barely wide enough for a human. This is probably against the rules, said Ambassador Choi Hee-jin as she squeezed through. They said we could use any method, replied Dongwu. They didn't say it had to be the intended method. Dr. Park Ji-won was studying the moving barriers as they ran. These obstacles move in patterns, she said. The aliens are so fast and strong that they don't bother to wait for the right timing, but if we time it right... She was correct. By waiting a few seconds and moving when the barriers shifted, the humans could walk through gaps that the other competitors were smashing through with brute force. They built this course for beings with super abilities, realized Hyojin. But that means they didn't think about beings who would use patience and observation. The humans were not winning. They were not even close to winning. But they were not losing as badly as everyone expected. And in the audience, aliens were starting to pay attention. Look at them, said a crystalline observer. They're so slow, but they keep moving forward. It's like watching water find a way. Around rocks, added another. They don't break the obstacles. They just avoid them. When new team members joined them for the next trials, the humans had already started changing how they approached problems. Pilot Han So-young arrived just in time for the space combat simulation. She was small and quick, with eyes that missed nothing. She had learned to fly in Earth's crowded airspace, where one mistake could cause crashes. The other pilots are incredible, she said. watching alien ships perform maneuvers that seemed impossible. Their ships can turn at angles that would kill a human. They can accelerate faster than our brains can think. So how do we compete with that? Asked Dongwu. We don't, said So-Young with a grin. We cheat. The space combat trial put each pilot in identical ships and asked them to capture a flag in the center of an asteroid field. The alien pilots immediately began showing off, performing barrel rolls and impossible turns as they raced toward the target. So-Young did something different. She flew slowly and carefully, hiding behind asteroids. While the other pilots fought each other in spectacular battles, she quietly moved toward the flag using a path that avoided all the fighting. "What is the human doing?" asked the trial supervisor. "She's not engaging in combat." "The rules said to capture the flag," replied Dongwu, who was watching from the control room. "They didn't say she had to fight anyone." When the alien pilots finally finished their battle, they turned to look. For the flag, it was gone. So-Young was already halfway back to the finish line, having avoided the fight entirely. "That's cheating," protested a Shimari pilot. "That's tactics," said So-Young calmly. The judges argued for an hour before deciding that she had technically followed the rules. She was awarded second place after a Luxendi pilot who had moved at light speed. Specialist O.J. Sung joined the team for the strategy trials. He was a former soldier who had learned to fight against enemies with better weapons and more soldiers. His specialty was making the impossible seem easy. "Every army I ever fought was stronger than mine," he told the team. "The trick is not to fight them the way they want to fight." The strategy trial was a war game. Each team controlled virtual armies and had to capture the enemy base. The aliens immediately began building massive armies with powerful weapons. Jae Sung did something else. He sent small groups of soldiers to hide in unexpected places. While the other teams fought huge battles, his tiny forces snuck around the fighting and attacked supply lines. "The human strategy is cowardly," complained a Korthak general. "The human strategy is working," observed the trial supervisor. One by one, the alien armies ran out of supplies. Their powerful weapons became useless without ammunition. Their strong soldiers became weak without food. Jae Sung's small hidden forces captured base after base, while the enemy armies starved. He won the trial outright. In the audience, betting was becoming serious. The odds against humanity were still high, but they were dropping fast. Some aliens were starting to study human tactics with genuine interest. "They don't fight like warriors," said a military observer. "They fight like survivors," finished another. "Like beings who have learned to win against impossible odds." Dr. Kang Min-ho joined the team for the science trials. He was a medical doctor who had spent years studying how different species stayed healthy. When he saw the alien competitors, he started taking notes. "Something's not right," he told Ji-won quietly. "Look at their biology. The Korthak are too strong for their bone structure. The Shimari process information too fast for their neural networks. The Luxendi move too quickly for their energy requirements." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they've been enhanced, genetically, cybernetically, or with drugs. None of these abilities are natural. This information changed everything. The humans realized they were not just competing against superior species. They were competing against species that had cheated their own biology. But it also explained something important. These enhanced beings were specialists. They were very good at one thing, but they had lost the ability to adapt." The humans started, working together in ways that surprised everyone. When Taeho couldn't solve an engineering problem alone, Ji-won would help with the biological aspects, while Hye-jin considered the political implications. When So Young needed to understand alien flight patterns, Jae Sung analyzed them like military movements. They're sharing information, observed an alien judge. Each individual is weak, but together they become stronger. Is that allowed? Asked another judge. The rules don't forbid cooperation, admitted the chief supervisor. We never thought to include such a rule because no other species does this. By the end of the third week, something strange was happening. Other lesser species in the trials began copying human tactics. Teams that had been rivals started sharing information. Competitors began looking for unconventional solutions instead of trying to overpower problems. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing concern. This was supposed to be entertainment, said Counselor Mordek. The humans were supposed to fail quickly and amusingly. Instead, they're changing how the trials work, replied Vex Tahari. Other species are starting to think like them. Perhaps we should disqualify them for disrupting the traditional format. On what grounds? They haven't broken any rules. They've simply found rules we never thought to make. In their quarters, the human team was planning for the final trials. They had survived longer than anyone expected, including themselves. We're actually doing this, said Hyajin with amazement. We're competing with beings that are basically gods, and we're keeping up. More than keeping up, said Dongwu. We're making them think differently. Look at today's trials. Half the teams tried cooperative strategies. Yoon Subin brought them news from around the station. The junior staff are calling you the teaching species, she said. You're showing everyone new ways to solve old problems. What about the senior staff? Asked Ji-won. They're worried, admitted Subin. Some of them are saying the trials need to be changed to prevent future disruptions. Disruptions? Said Jae Sung. We're following their rules. You're following their rules better than they are, said Subin. And that's making them look foolish. Outside their window, the lights of Nexus Prime twinkled like stars. Ships came and went, carrying news of the trials to every corner of the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, beings were starting to ask questions about the way things had always been done. The humans had come to the trials as a joke, but they were turning into something much more dangerous to the established order. They were becoming an example. The Grand Coliseum of Nexus Prime held 10 million spectators. Beings from across the galaxy had come to watch the semi-final trials. What had started as a joke about primitive humans had become the most watched trials in galactic history. Captain Lee Dongwu stood with his team in the preparation chamber. Through the thick walls, they could hear the roar of the crowd. Only 8 teams remained from the original 20. I never thought we'd make it this far, said Dr. Park Ji-won, checking her equipment one last time. Neither did anyone else, replied Ambassador Choi Hyejin. The betting pools are going crazy. Some aliens have bet their entire fortunes on us. Yoon Subin burst into the chamber, looking frightened. You need to know something, she said breathlessly. I've been monitoring the Council's private communications. They're planning to sabotage you. Engineer Kim Tae-ho looked up from his toolkit. What kind of sabotage? Your equipment for today's trial. They've weakened the materials. Your tools will break when you try to use them. They want you to fail so badly that no one will question it. Dongwu felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. Can you prove this? I recorded their communications, said Subin, holding up a small device. But if I reveal this, they'll say I'm lying to help my own species. Then we need to catch them in the act, said Specialist O.J. Sung. Let them sabotage us, but make sure everyone sees it. Dr. Kang Min-ho, who had been quietly thinking, suddenly smiled. I have a better idea. What if we let them think their sabotage worked, but we're ready for it? The semifinal trial was announced as the Challenge of Innovation. Each team had to build a device that could solve a complex problem. They were given identical materials and tools and had 6 hours to complete their work. The problem was difficult. Create a system that could purify water, generate power, and provide communication across vast distances, all using only the materials provided. As the trial began, the human team immediately noticed that their tools were defective. Cutting devices wouldn't cut properly. Joining materials fell apart under pressure. Measuring instruments gave wrong readings. But they had expected this. "Backup plan," whispered Taeho. "Use the defective tools as materials instead of trying to fix them." While other teams built complex devices using their perfect equipment, the humans began taking apart their broken tools. They used the metal from damaged cutters as structural support. They turned broken measuring devices into simple switches. In the audience, aliens began to notice something was wrong. "Why are the human tools breaking?" asked a spectator. "Look at their materials," said another. "Those joining compounds are clearly defective." The noise in the Colosseum grew louder. Aliens began pointing and talking among themselves. On the big screens showing the trial, it became obvious that only the human equipment was failing. Pilot Han So-young was working on the communication part of the device. Her equipment kept shorting out, sparking dangerously every time she tried to use it. "This is getting ridiculous," she said loudly, making sure her voice carried to the recording devices. "It's like someone wants us to fail." Counselor Vex Tari, watching from the VIP section, began to look uncomfortable. Other council members were whispering to each other, some looking angry. "This is too obvious," hissed Counselor Mordek. "The entire galaxy can see their equipment is sabotaged." "It's too late to stop it now," replied Vextari. "We have to hope they fail quickly." But the humans didn't fail. They adapted. Taeho had figured out how to use the defective joining compounds. By mixing them with materials from broken tools, he created a substance that was actually stronger than what the other teams were using. Ji-won discovered that the wrong readings from their measuring devices followed a pattern. By understanding the pattern, she could get correct measurements by doing simple math. Jae-sung turned the communication problem into a tactical challenge. Instead of trying to build one perfect system, he built several simple systems that worked together. 3 hours into the trial, something unexpected happened. The Shimari team's perfect equipment began to malfunction. Their precise measurements became slightly wrong. Their flawless materials developed tiny cracks. "What's happening?" demanded the trial supervisor. Minho looked up from his work with an innocent expression. "Oh, that! I may have accidentally contaminated their workspace with some compounds from our defective materials. Sorry about that." But his smile suggested it wasn't an accident at all. The contamination spread. One by one, the other teams found their equipment becoming unreliable. Not broken like the human equipment, but just imperfect enough to cause problems. "This is sabotage," shouted a Korthak competitor. "Yes, it is," said Dongwu, standing up and addressing the entire Colosseum. "But not by us." He pointed to the recording devices that had been documenting everything. "Everyone can see that our equipment was sabotaged from the beginning. We've been building our device with broken tools and defective materials for 3 hours. The Colosseum erupted in noise. Aliens were shouting, arguing, and demanding explanations. On the big screens, replays clearly showed the human equipment failing while other teams had perfect materials. "But now," continued Dongwu, "everyone's equipment is unreliable. Now everyone has to adapt and improvise. Now it's a fair competition. The trial supervisors were in chaos. They huddled together, arguing about what to do. Some wanted to restart the trial with new equipment. Others wanted to disqualify the humans for contaminating the workspace. But the crowd was watching. 10 million beings across the galaxy had seen the obvious sabotage. Any decision that punished the humans would look like the Council was trying to cover up their cheating. "The trial continues," announced the chief supervisor reluctantly. "All teams must complete their devices with whatever equipment they have." The next 3 hours changed everything. The alien teams, used to perfect tools and flawless materials, struggled with equipment that only worked sometimes. Their careful plans fell apart when measurements were wrong or materials failed. But the humans thrived. They had been improvising for 3 hours already. They knew how to work with uncertainty. They understood how to fix problems as they appeared. Their final device was ugly compared to the sleek alien constructions. It was built from spare parts, broken tools, and improvised solutions. But when testing time came, it worked perfectly. The water purifier removed more contaminants than any other device. The power generator produced steady energy even when components failed. The communication system reached further and clearer than systems built with perfect equipment. "How is this possible?" asked the trial supervisor, staring at the test results. "Simple," said Tejo. "We built it to work even when things go wrong. They built theirs to work only when everything goes right." The humans won the trial. In the aftermath, the story spread across the galaxy faster than light. Videos of the obvious sabotage, followed by human adaptation and victory, were watched by billions of beings. More importantly, other species began to understand what had really happened. The humans hadn't just been sabotaged in this trial. They had been invited as entertainment, expected to fail for everyone's amusement. "The Council played us all for fools," said a representative from the Veltari. "They made us think the trials were about merit, but they were rigged from the beginning." "How many other species have been eliminated unfairly?" asked a Korthak delegate. "How many deserving races were denied membership because they didn't fit the Council's expectations?" A revolution began in the audience. Not with weapons or violence, but with questions and demands for answers. Species that had failed previous trials wanted to know if they had been sabotaged, too. Young aliens started asking why the Council members all came from races that had perfect abilities. Back in their quarters, the human team was exhausted but amazed. "We're in the finals," said Hyejin, still not quite believing it. "More than that," said Su Bin, monitoring communications across the station. "Half the galaxy is talking about corruption in the trials. Some species are demanding that the Council be investigated." "What's the final trial?" asked So Young. "Nobody knows," admitted Su Bin. "It's always kept secret until the last moment. But given what's happened, they're probably changing it right now." Outside their window, protest ships from dozens of worlds were arriving at Nexus Prime. The trials had become more than a competition. They had become a symbol of everything wrong with galactic society. "Whatever they throw at us tomorrow," said Dongwu, "we'll face it together." "Together," agreed his team. In the council chambers, emergency meetings were happening behind closed doors. What had started as a simple joke about primitive humans had become a crisis that threatened the foundation of galactic government. The joke was turning serious, and the council was no longer laughing. The final trial chamber was unlike anything the humans had seen before. It was a perfect sphere made of some material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid. Inside, Gravity worked in strange ways. Up and down seemed to change depending on where you stood. Only 3 teams remained: the humans, the crystalline Shimari, and the collective consciousness of the Veltari. The other competitors had been eliminated or had withdrawn in protest over the obvious corruption in the trials. "Welcome to the ultimate test," announced Counselor Vextari, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "This trial will determine who is truly worthy to join the Galactic Council." Captain Li Dongwu looked around the chamber with his team. The sphere was completely empty, except for a small platform in the center where a single device sat humming, with energy. "The challenge is simple," continued Vextari. "Reach the center and activate the device. But be warned, this chamber will test not just your abilities, but your worthiness to govern others." Engineer Kim Tae-ho studied the walls of the sphere. There are no handholds, no stairs, no obvious path, and gravity keeps shifting. "It's designed to require multiple abilities," observed Dr. Park Ji-won. "The Shimari can probably calculate the exact path. The Veltari can spread out and explore all possibilities at once." "And what can we do?" asked Ambassador Choi Hee-jin. Before anyone could answer, the trial began. The Shimari immediately started glowing as they calculated trajectories and gravity, fields. Their crystalline bodies began moving with mathematical precision toward the center. The Veltari spread out like a living carpet, flowing along the walls of the sphere. Parts of their collective consciousness tested different routes, while other parts shared the information instantly. The humans stood at the starting point, watching their competitors pull ahead. "We can't match their speed or their computational power," said pilot Han So-young. "Then maybe we're not supposed to," said Specialist O.J. Sung thoughtfully. "Think about it. This is the final trial. It's supposed to test worthiness to govern. What makes someone worthy to lead others?" Dr. Kang Min-ho, who had been quietly observing, suddenly smiled. "I think I understand. This isn't really about reaching the center first." As if responding to his words, the chamber suddenly filled with holographic images. Thousands of alien faces appeared around them, representing every species in the galaxy. Young and old, powerful and weak, advanced and primitive. "These are the beings you would govern," said a new voice. It seemed to come from the chamber itself. "Show us how you would lead them." The Shimari continued their mathematical approach, calculating the most efficient path through the shifting gravity. They moved with perfect logic, ignoring the holographic faces around them. The Veltari flowed through the chamber like a flood, overwhelming any obstacles through sheer numbers. They too seemed uninterested in the watching faces, but the humans stopped. "Look at them," whispered Ji-won, staring at the holographic beings. "Some of them are terrified. Others are angry. They're not just images. They're real reactions from real people." Dongwu approached one of the holograms, a small creature that looked frightened. "What are you afraid of?" he asked gently. The hologram flickered and became more solid. "The trials," it said in a tiny voice. "My people tried the trials once. We failed. Now we can never join the galaxy. We are alone forever." Around the chamber, other holograms began speaking when the humans approached them with kindness, instead of trying to push past them. "The council ignores us," said an elderly alien. "They make laws but never ask what we need. We are strong but not smart enough for them," complained a warrior-like being. "They think strength is primitive. We are smart, "But not strong enough," said another. "They think we are useless." The humans began to understand. This wasn't a test of reaching the center, it was a test of leadership. "Tae-ho," said Dongwu, "can you build something to help that frightened species? Some kind of communication device so they won't be alone?" "On it," said Tae-ho, pulling tools from his pack. Within minutes, he had built a simple transmitter from spare parts. When he gave it to the small alien's hologram, the creature smiled for the first time. "Hye-jin," continued Dongwu, "can you help organize these different species? Find ways for them to work together?" Hye-jin began moving between holograms, introducing different aliens to each other. The strong warriors met the smart scientists. The wise elders met the energetic youth. Soon, groups were forming based on cooperation instead of competition. "So Young, can you help them understand each other's different ways of thinking?" So Young used her pilot's training to translate between different types of minds. She helped logical species understand emotional ones. She showed individualistic races how collective consciousness worked. The humans weren't racing toward the center. They were helping the holographic beings around them. And as they did, something amazing happened. The holograms began working together. The small, frightened species shared their unique abilities with stronger allies. The warriors protected the scientists. The wise elders guided the impulsive youth. And together, all of these species began building a path toward the center of the chamber. The Shimari and Veltari, who had been ahead, suddenly found themselves stuck. The shifting gravity of the chamber had become more complex, responding to emotions and cooperation rather than just calculation or force. "This is impossible," declared the Shimari leader. "The mathematics don't work when variables keep changing based on feelings. We cannot reach the center when the path requires individual decision-making," admitted the Veltari. "Our collective consciousness struggles with personal responsibility." But the humans, supported by their holographic allies, continued moving forward, not because they were individually superior, but because they had united dozens of different species with different abilities. "I understand now," said Minho as they approached the center. "This chamber isn't testing our power, it's testing our ability to inspire others." The device in the center was simple, just a button that needed to be pressed, but around it, words appeared in every language. "Who speaks for the galaxy?" The Shimari tried to press the button first. "We have the most logical minds," they declared. Nothing happened. The Veltari spread themselves over the device. "We have perfect unity," they claimed. Still nothing. The humans looked at each other, then at the hundreds of holographic beings who had helped them reach this point. "We don't speak for the galaxy," said Dongwu loudly. "The galaxy speaks for itself. Every species, every voice, every dream matters." He pressed the button not alone, but with his hand joined by holographic hands from dozens of different species. The babe chamber filled with light. When the light faded, they were back in the main arena. But something was different. The holographic beings were still there, and they were no longer holograms. They were real representatives from hundreds of worlds, brought by advanced technology to witness the final trial. "Incredible," breathed the trial supervisor. "The final trial has never ended this way before." Counselor Vextari looked stunned. "The chamber was supposed to test individual worthiness for council membership. How did it bring all these species here?" "Because," said a new voice, "the chamber was designed by the original founders of the council, before it became corrupt. An ancient being materialized in the center of the arena. It looked like starlight given form, old beyond measure, I am the last of the first council, it said. We created the trials to find leaders who could unite the galaxy, not rule it. The current council has forgotten this purpose. The ancient being turned to address the crowd of hundreds of species. For too long, the galaxy has been governed by 12 races who believe they are superior. They have kept others out, not because they were unworthy, but because they were different. The humans have shown us what true leadership means. Not the power to command, but the wisdom to listen. Not the strength to conquer, but the courage to unite. Around the arena, beings from hundreds of worlds began to cheer. Not just for humanity, but for the idea that the galaxy could be different. Vextari stood up angrily. This is outrageous. The trials have specific rules. Humanity cannot simply change everything because they think they know better. You're right, said Dongwu calmly. We can't change everything, but we can ask everyone else what they want. He turned to face the assembled representatives. Citizens of the galaxy, you have seen what happened here. The trials were rigged. Species were eliminated for entertainment. The council made decisions about your lives without asking your opinions. What do you want to do about it? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of species began demanding representation. They wanted seats on the council. They wanted fair trials. They wanted their voices heard. This is chaos, protested Councillor Mordek. This is democracy, replied Hyejin with a smile. The vote that followed was not part of the original trials. It was something completely new. For the first time in galactic history, every species got to choose their representatives. The old Galactic Council was dissolved. In its place, a new government was formed with representatives from every world that wanted to participate. Humanity didn't become the rulers of the galaxy. They became the organizers who helped everyone else find their voice. 6 months later, Captain Li Dongwu sat in his new office.